Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this week's episode of Mocktail Minutes. This is Bailey.
And this is Brianna.
This week we are talking about protein. Oh, I guess we should introduce our drinks.
Oh, yeah.
Out of whack.
I'm just rolling with it. Yeah.
That's fine. So we are going to talk about protein, but with our Mocktail Minutes, of course, we have to share our drinks. I am doing a lemonade matcha. I've done it in a few earlier episodes over the summer, but I found some in my drawer at work, so that's what we're doing today.
Nice. I'm doing an Olipop, but I'm doing the watermelon lime. And I don't know if it's new. I've never seen it, but it's really good.
I've seen it. I just never got it because I don't like watermelon taste usually.
It does taste like watermelon, so I wouldn't get that.
Yes.
It does. It does. I don't really taste the lime, but yeah, it's definitely watermelon.
Okay. Yeah.
So don't get
But
it.
yes, we are talking about protein today. Protein, I feel like it's becoming more of a hot topic with nutrition. I feel like we always go through stages of what's the cool thing to do right now. And I feel like protein is becoming cool, which is not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think it's like more people are talking about it. I don't think it's ever been this big, at least maybe not in the last 10 years. So with it though, I feel like it's not like a fad thing. And I feel like it's something that's not going away because we see this in nutrition, like, ooh, low fat, like low carb, or like high fat, or, whatever. I feel like talking about protein is not going to go away because it's so necessary for everything. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
all the micro are the all of the nutrients, macro and micro are, but you need protein.
Protein is kind of gold. And I think it is something that, I mean, when I used to think about protein, like I thought about like the bodybuilders or the athletes. I was like, I don't really need much protein. I
Mhm.
didn't eat a whole bunch growing up, and I definitely eat a lot more protein now.
Yeah.
And I've noticed quite a difference, especially while I was learning more with becoming a metabolism makeover coach. That was one thing I really adjusted was number one, how much protein I was doing made a huge difference, and it's helped me like in the gym be able to lift more and recover better and actually build muscle, so that's always a plus.
And I think that's the feedback that we get a lot is even people that sign up that are like already eating pretty healthy and they feel like they're eating balanced. That is like such common feedback is like, I've never focused on protein like this. And I didn't realize how much I was under eating protein and what a difference it makes. Yeah.
So yes, we're going to give you a little introduction to protein. Obviously, we go more in depth a little bit during metabolism makeover when you work with us. This is going to give you a little intro. And with that being said, we will actually have a Black Friday deal coming up in probably 10 days. This episode is airing on November 9th, so we should have a Black Friday deal for you for Metabolism Makeover on the 19th. And all of our episodes, we do have a link for you to check out Metabolism Makeover. And you can always message us any questions you have about it. But so, yeah, let's jump into protein. Why should you even care about it in the first place? There was actually a study that I found that had talked about they did a couple thousand people where they studied increasing their protein just at breakfast, and that has actually been helpful just doing it at that one meal because you're less likely to overdo it on calories later on in the day, which really makes sense because not calories, protein is going to be a super fulfilling macronutrient. It's going to be great at shutting down your hunger hormones. It's going to help with your blood sugar balancing. It's going to keep you fuller for longer. So if you're doing all those things, then you're going to have a trickle effect to the rest of your day on not overeating, not feeling hungry all day long. So it definitely makes sense that eating protein earlier in the day shows that you eat less calories.
Yeah.
Even though, I mean, we don't really focus on calories overall, but
Yeah.
they still do have a place.
Well, because it really sets you up because then you're not playing catch up for the rest of the day. Because it's
Mhm.
usually what happens is like if you eat an inadequate breakfast or you're skipping breakfast, eventually by lunchtime, you're going to be really, really hungry. And this is where, like, either most people eat a much larger lunch than they would have in a normal setting because they're kind of making up for it, or they still try to have like that lighter lunch. And then by the time dinner time rolls around, this is where you get your like, I'm constantly hungry after dinner. I'm snacking, after my kids go to bed. Like I just can't stop eating at night. And you tend to overeat and probably overeat on less nutritious foods because your body's just playing catch up.
Hmm.
It's hungry.
And when we're thinking about it, I mean, think about like a bag of donuts versus a carton of eggs. They could be about the same price, but that bag of donuts is going to react in your body a lot differently than some eggs were
Yeah.
because of that protein, because of the healthy fats that are in it. So they're going to react a little differently too. So when we're thinking about making swaps in our diet, where it feels like the eating healthier is more expensive, I want you to think about things like that. Like, where could we make this swap so we feel better? And it's not like we're spending outrageous amounts of money on these new foods.
Exactly. It's just how you tweak it, how you look at it.
So with protein, it is made up of amino acids. And with these amino acids, we do have essential and non essential. So, non essential amino acids, they can be made by the body. We don't necessarily have to get them from food. I mean, we still want to,
Mhm.
but they're going to be made by the body. While essential amino acids cannot be made by the body, so you have to get them from the diet. So, that's kind of the main thing there with essential and non essential amino acids. And this is where complete proteins come into play, where they're going to be important to get all the essential amino acids.
Mhm.
Collagen, for example, is a great one to point out. Collagen is great to include. I have nothing against collagen. I use collagen, but it's not going to be a complete protein. So that's why I like to pair it with like my protein powder because I'm getting like it's an egg white based protein powder. So I'm getting enough leucine, enough of the essential amino acids, adding collagen for the other benefits for like your joints, your ligaments, things like that.
Yeah. And we get this question a lot. So there's this big common misconception that collagen is useless because it can't be counted towards your overall protein intake, which I want to touch on that because that's incorrect. So, yes, collagen is lacking tryptophan mostly. It's also a little bit lower in some of the other essential ones, but that's like the main one that collagen doesn't have. So, I wouldn't be making a smoothie with just collagen powder. Like, I would be making it with a protein powder that is a whole source, and then maybe adding some collagen to that as well, or to my coffee, or having collagen with my coffee with a little bit of milk splashed in it because I can have dairy. That is going to get me complete. Like, so many people are like, it can't count towards it, so don't even try it. But I'm like, collagen is an easy way to get in 10 to 20 extra grams of protein a day.
Mhm.
So you can count it. Just don't rely on it at a meal for your protein source, like your only protein source. And the same thing goes with plant-based proteins. Most of them, you have to pair them with other proteins so that you can get complete proteins. But just because something isn't complete doesn't mean it can't count towards your protein goal. You just have to be more intentional about it.
Yeah. Do we want to like run through the non-essential and essential amino acids? Like, what are they?
We can. It depends. Or we can hit like on a couple of them. Like, I don't know if you want to touch on like leucine specifically. I mean, what do you think? I'm
So,
down.
yeah, let's go over the essential ones because those are ones that you need to get from
From
the
the
diet.
yeah.
Not that you need to like start researching and being like, "Oh my gosh, I got to get all these amino acids in." This is just for informational purposes, like the more you know type of thing, because if you're getting enough variety of protein, you're going to hit these marks. If you're getting enough protein in general, you're going to be there. You're going to be good. So, like with the essential amino acids, you have phenylalanine, valine, tryptophan, threonine, isoleucine, methionine, histidine, leucine, and lysine. Lots of words there. Like I said, you don't need to worry about that too much. And if I messed up some of those words, I apologize, but
Yeah.
those are your 9 essential ones. So, leucine is a big one that we talk about a lot because of its role in muscle protein synthesis. Brianna, do you want to touch on that?
Yes. So that's like a key player is leucine. Now, all these you have to have. And I will just say, like, if you were eating animal protein, you were probably getting an adequate amount of all of these essential acids for the most part. Like, most of them are all found in your animal proteins. So, but leucine is really the one that helps with muscle protein synthesis. And really, it's getting enough at every meal to really keep that going. And so, there's a lot of debate about it. It's really hard to do human studies on it. and I'll get into like what I was just going to segue on in a minute, but 25 to 30 grams of an animal protein at a meal, which is great because if you do metabolism makeover or you're already someone that tries to prioritize your protein, this is kind of like our where we kind of tell people to start or really like make as your like non-negotiable is at 25 to 30. So if you're doing that, you're going to be getting enough protein, specifically leucine, to have those muscle building effects. Now, there was a lot of thought in the bodybuilding world and all this that like there was a threshold, right? That it was kind of like if you know, that 25 to 30 grams is what you need for muscle protein synthesis. And so like it caps out and anything extra isn't necessary. Or like there's a protein threshold and it doesn't benefit you to eat more than that because your muscles can only use a certain amount of leucine or whatever. That kind of thinking is a little bit silly if you think about it because and we can get into this, protein is used for so many more things in the body than just building muscle. So like, yeah, maybe you only need that 25 to 30 grams to initiate that, but that's okay if you're eating more. We need it for other things. Like we're not just like it's silly to be like, "Oh, our muscles can only use this much," which again, very hard to test. That's not correct. We know that. It's not all about like getting gains.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing.
That's what's so hard about just nutrition in general. It's hard to get long-term studies because especially when we're trying to figure out like what's harmful, like we don't want to tell people to eat something or do something every day. We're going to be like, "Okay, let's see if you die." Like that's not ethical.
Yeah, it's not ethical. It's really hard to control. That's why we use rats and stuff a lot in studies because we can control everything you're doing. But like humans, everything like cascades into everything. It's so hard to put people in a controlled environment where you're controlling their stress, their thoughts, their hormones, their activity, like their sleep, literally everything every single day.
Yeah.
And
It'd be
we've done studies like that. And they're not good.
mhm.
No, like
It would be very hard to just control everything for hundreds of different people
yeah,
because I mean biologically we're different anyways. So it just wouldn't work and we don't want to kill people to see like how far we can go. Like that's just
right.
weird.
And even if a study did show, ooh, this kills people or this doesn't kill people, that's not to say that it can't do something different in somebody else. So like, yeah, we're a biology project. Okay. We're
Mhm.
all different. And this is where it's really important to understand what these things do in your body because then you can figure out what your body really needs instead of trying to do like a cookie cutter plan that everybody else is following and then you're not seeing the same results as everyone else because that's frustrating.
Mhm. Yeah. So I guess with protein, obviously the first thing we always think about with protein is more muscle. So I mean, we like muscle. It looks nice. It feels good. So we are thinking about the benefits with muscle mass, number one, it's going to help healthy aging too. I
Mhm.
mean, obviously the aesthetic piece of things, you're feeling better, but aging, it's shown to decrease risk of like fractured hips,
Yeah.
and we can age a lot better if we have more muscle mass. You also have more energy. Thinking about muscle versus fat mass, the more muscle you have, you're going to have more energy throughout the day. It's going to help decrease like chronic disease. And like I said, in general, you're just going to feel better. It's
Mhm.
going to essentially kind of help decrease inflammation as well when we're changing our body composition. So then when that happens, I mean, we all know what it kind of feels like to be inflamed. Inflammation is kind of one of those weird things where it's like we don't feel it, but we feel it. Or like we don't notice how much we feel it until all of a sudden we're not as inflamed. But it's like when we have that puffiness feeling, we kind of just feel that like bogged down type of thing. So
Mhm.
that's one really big thing I start to notice when we start adjusting meals as well, just that inflammation decreasing. But outside of the muscle mass benefits, like Brianna was saying, protein also has different roles in the body too.
Mhm. Yeah. It's like you need it for enzymes and hormones. You need it to maintain your pH. You need it for your immune system, for fluid balance, for transport of different nutrients and different chemicals and compounds in the body. We use protein for all that. To store nutrients. Like, I mean, we need it for everything. And this is one where and then I always get a lot of pushback when I say this, usually from people who are like I don't know, just really big into dieting. I say this and I want to like kind of say, I want to tell you why I say this. So if you're going to overdo it on a nutrient, I would say protein is the one to do it. And I tell people this because it's a little less likely that protein is going to be stored as fat. That doesn't mean that in excess it can't be stored as fat, because we don't really store protein in our body. We have like an amino acid pool where we store a little bit. Nah. So anything in excess can be stored as fat, but we need protein for so many things that it's likely that you're going to be using a lot of your protein for all these different things that we just talked about in the body. So it's just a little bit different than like if you were to overdo it on like a couple of other ones. On the flip side, it's kind of hard to overdo protein because it's so satiating. So like, you can sit down and have a whole bread basket, right? And like a whole like plate of fries, and then have like your pasta, and like you're just like, oh, this is delicious. And then eventually you're full and you're like, oh gosh, I really overdid it. But it's really hard to overdo it on protein. You're not going to get this giant plate of steak and then just keep eating, right? It's like super satiating. So for the most part, you're going to have better portion control, and you're going to just probably not overdo it on protein unless you're like a bodybuilder and you're like guzzling down egg yolks every morning and like force feeding yourself chicken breasts. Okay. Like you're not going to do it. So can it be stored as fat? Yes, but we need it for so many things. And likely you've been under eating it.
Mm-hmm. And your body really doesn't prefer to store it as fat anyways.
Mm-mm.
And then yes, there's a concern with like your kidneys. If you have functioning kidneys, you can handle the protein. Like Brianna said, it's very hard to overdo it on protein, especially if we're getting it from like whole food sources. So with that being said, I think that's an important point to bring up is when we're saying to eat more protein, this does not mean to go survive off protein shakes and protein powders and protein bars, because there are good quality ones, but that doesn't mean we should just live off them. Number one, they're not always as satisfying. So that's one thing. Number two, we just need those whole food sources. And when we're getting a variety from like animal protein as well, we're going to get other benefits from it. And we just don't want to eat highly processed items all the time. Like I
Right.
said, good choices, great to have on hand. I mean, I eat a protein powder. Well, I use protein powder every morning for breakfast, but I'm still like eating animal protein at lunch and dinner, still getting in something to like chew my food.
Mm-hmm.
That's also something with like the Quest protein chips. I've had a lot of people that will do those and they're like, they just don't keep me full, but I'm getting like 50 grams of protein because I'm eating these. And then plus I'm eating like chicken or whatever it is. But like those chips, I just find they're not very fulfilling for many people because it's not the same as eating a chicken breast or some ground beef or bison or whatever it is that you're choosing. It's just not the same.
Right. It's not. It's not as satiating. You're missing out on a lot of other things that you get from whole food sources, like vitamins, minerals, other nutrients that are in there. And plus, our bodies just really like to digest and absorb whole food sources because there's a bunch of different stuff always going on in the body. And when we eat foods in the forms that they're naturally in, our body it's just happier. It likes it. So
That's it.
you can have a protein powder once a day, but if you're relying on protein powder at least twice a day, or you're having a protein bar more than once a day, I would encourage you to kind of like increase your diversity, even include some of those plant-based proteins, like see different ways that you can increase protein rather than, I had some chicken and that wasn't like a ton, so like I paired it with a protein shake. Like that's okay if you're doing that sometimes for sure, but like there's a lot of other things that you could have added, like maybe edamame or chickpeas or some cheese, or whatever it is. Like try always whole foods first.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's good. With that, also, so things like bacon or peanut butter, they have protein in it, but I wouldn't necessarily count that as my protein source. If you tried to get like 30 grams of protein from peanut butter, you're probably not going to feel so good because that's a lot of fat that comes along with it. Like, that's a lot of peanut butter to have to eat.
It is.
So, those would be more of a healthy fat that you could include. They're going to add to the protein. And this is all things that we kind of help you with, but just to kind of keep that in mind as well, what these protein sources actually are. It's going to be more of your animal based proteins. And then if you are vegan or vegetarian, you can still get protein in, but I'm going to be honest, it takes more planning.
Yeah. You just have to be
Oh, yes.
more like
More mindful.
intentional about it. You really do have to plan it, which is fine. I just find most people, and this isn't like free if you're doing like vegetarian or, vegan, like for whatever like moral or religious reasons, that's totally fine. But I see a lot of people just feeling like it's healthier, it's a better way to eat, and it's kind of like a fad. And then they end up like having a lot of nutrition like deficiencies because
Mhm.
they don't really know what they're doing. And I would argue like it's not healthier, you know, if you're lacking nutrients, it's not healthier. You can do it in just as a healthy way, but you can't just be like, oh, I decided to go vegetarian. I'm like automatically healthier. Meh.
Yes. French fries are vegan, but doesn't mean we should eat them all day long.
So are Oreos.
Yeah.
I know this because my sister-in-law did like a vegan thing when I was pregnant, which by the way, which was so horrible. I was like 9 months pregnant. I was past my due date. I was super agitated. I'm like, I want chocolate ice cream. That's what I
Yeah.
want. Like I'm agitated. And she's like, no, you can't. I'm vegan. Like you can't bring that in this house. And I was like, I'm bringing it in this.
Watch me.
I'm bringing it. A week later, she was eating McDonald's again. Okay. So it's like, it's
Yeah.
all about balance. But yeah, if you're vegan and you're listening to this, don't think we're like bashing being vegan. I highly suggest you work with somebody, a professional like us, who can help you like balance out your diet and make sure you're getting all of those essential nutrients that you need.
Yep. Like I said, it does take more work, does take more time to kind of plan it out to make sure we're getting that good variety in. Overall, working to increase your protein, start with breakfast. Like really pump it up at breakfast and you're going to feel so much better throughout the day. So if you're listening to this and you're like, my breakfast is avocado toast is great. Not a lot of protein there.
Yeah.
Pump it up there. Also, using your snacks as a time to add nutrients. Snacks are a time where we think, oh, bad. Not, oh, bad. It's an, oh, let's add some nutrients because I have 7 hours between two meals.
Right.
Great time to throw in a snack there. And then I also think it's helpful because protein, I mean, it usually takes one of the longest times to cook, like when you're putting a meal together. So, pre cook some protein. Like when thinking of meal planning and meal prep, again, it doesn't have to be a full what is it called,
Like a full thing.
no, we'll just
A full thing. A
like
full,
like a not extravaganza, but like a
I know exactly the
a whole
thank
production.
you. That's a whole thing. I knew it. I was like, what is the word? It's like gonna come to me as soon as we get done here.
Yes, so meal prep doesn't have to be a whole production. So think about just what's going to help you. Protein is an easy one to meal prep. Hard boiled eggs, literally so easy to meal prep, and you don't really have to pay attention. If it boils for too long, it's fine. Your eggs will still turn out fine. I do it all the time. I forget about that.
You can
But like
even buy them pre-boiled. I mean, they're more money, but you could.
yeah,
They have them at Costco. I do that.
you do. So that's an option too.
Yeah.
And then like chicken in a crock pot, pork loin in the crock pot, beef round tip steak in a crock pot. Anything can go in a crock pot. I had a client yesterday. She had a beef heart that she got from someone, and she's like, I don't know what to do with it. I was like, you can probably put it in the crock pot, and I found a recipe.
Put in the crock pot. 100%. Yeah, you can make anything in the crock pot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, we're heading into colder weather. Like, you could do like a turkey chili on the crock pot, and then you're adding some of those plant sources too, like beans. Beans have protein, beans have fiber. You can make, it's not really the summer anymore, but during the summer, I like to grill up like chicken in the beginning of the week, just like a big giant family pack. And then you have it. Or like make a side of pasta salad with some chickpea pasta, put some like extra, like, some beans in there, protein and
Mhm.
fiber. Um,
Exactly.
I think I want to touch on this because I feel like we have a lot of listeners who have done metabolism makeover and maybe they're a little bit newer to it. And because I get this question often, like, okay, I increased my protein, I do feel really good, but I've been doing this for X amount of time and I feel like I'm not still seeing results, even though I'm feeling less hungry. I know I'm eating a little bit more food, like I feel good. I would say, like, and you can touch on this too, one of the biggest mistakes I see is increasing protein and only increasing protein. So do you want to talk about that?
Yes, this is a great point because how I talked in the beginning, like I said, I think we are moving into high protein is the great new thing now.
Yeah.
This is amazing. But we have other macronutrients, we have other micronutrients. If we are just focusing on protein, we have to also make sure our water is on point, unless you want to be constipated and not feel great all day.
Yes.
So, water, but also like, what does your fiber look like? I know vegetables aren't the most exciting thing, but they are super important for like your gut health, loaded with vitamins and minerals, antioxidants for your immune system. So we need all of these components. So while protein is the gold star here that we're talking about, we can't just do protein and not think about the other foods
Mm-hmm.
because they all play their role. So we gotta do a little bit of everything, and that's where I think we can really come in to help you because it does feel a little bit overwhelming when you're like trying to do all the things.
Yeah.
And I think protein is a great place to start, but we also have to kind of like keep progressing and tweaking the meals a little bit there. So like fiber is usually one that we're missing out on.
Oh yeah.
Is what I usually see. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yes, fiber, and I think specifically from those like carbohydrate sources, right?
Mhm.
Like just being scared of fruit, number one, like being scared of fruit or being scared of like high fiber starchy carbs or being scared of like breads and stuff. And so I would just encourage you, like, yeah, I mean, if you got to start somewhere, I definitely think protein is where it's at, but like think about fiber second and just keep an eye on your plate and just try to identify one source, like one whole food source, like fruit, vegetable, whatever it is, any of those, put them on your plate as well and have it. This could be as simple as like adding a little bit of berries to your breakfast.
Hmm.
Your chicken salad that you have because you're up in your protein, awesome. Have it with some high fiber crackers or some whole grain bread. Like, just because I see that often. And then sometimes it's like, I'm not seeing results. So let me increase protein even more. And then I'm getting clients who are doing 40 to 50 grams of protein, which, like, awesome, fantastic. But I still see their calories really, really low. And that's because they're not thinking about everything else. So everything like works together.
Well, when you mentioned salad too, that's a good one for the fiber to bring up. I know we're focusing on protein right now, but with salads, lettuce itself is not super high in fiber.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean it's not great to include. Yeah, have a salad if you want a salad, but thinking about those other vegetables too that are more fibrous is going to help you bump up that fiber too.
Yeah.
You don't have to always do salads. With that, so we went over a little bit of a couple ways to help increase that protein. Another way is to use a protein powder.
Mm-hmm.
We just said don't use a protein powder for every single thing, but it is perfectly fine to use once a day or
Oh,
whenever
yeah.
you want to because it's going to help support your protein needs, especially if you were going to have a hard time incorporating protein. If you need something quick and simple, this is just a very easy way to increase it. With that being said, if we're going to use a protein powder, especially every morning for like a smoothie or something, let's make it high quality.
Yes, I agree. Like, when I say like don't rely on it all the time, I mean like don't be like I'm gonna have protein powder for,
Breakfast, lunch, dinner.
breakfast and lunch, and then I'm also my snack is a protein bar, and like, but having it once a day for sure in a smoothie, because you can make a smoothie like really full of like nutrients, really hit your protein goal, your fiber goal, especially. That's like another easy one. But yeah, I agree. Like a high quality protein powder is really important, and we'll put like some links in the show notes for some ones that we recommend. But if you're like checking out, if you have, most people have protein powder, so use these kind of guidelines to see like, okay, is this a good one? So number one, at least 20 grams of protein. So if your protein powder is like 12, 15, I mean, I've seen some of they're like 8, I'm like, no, that's not something that you want to be relying on. So 20 grams of protein, less than 5 grams of added sugar, just because you don't really need a ton of sugar in your protein powder. You really don't. And I know a lot of the really, really yummy tasting ones are going to be higher in sugar. You could be making your smoothies yummy from other things, other flavors. Okay. Like throw some fruit in it, throw some cinnamon, throw some, whatever. And with that being said, a lot of them that have low sugar, they put other sweeteners in it so that it does taste good. So you're going to see artificial sweeteners like sucralose and then sugar alcohols, which is like erythritol. So I'll let you touch on the other ones, but if you have been drinking a protein shake and you notice, gosh, I'm just so bloated, like my stomach is kind of upset, check out what artificial sweeteners they're using to sweeten it with, because most people are really sensitive to those sugar alcohols. So, and this isn't everyone, like, and there's a threshold too. Like for me, if it's like less than 2 grams, I'm like fine. But anything more than that, I'm like, oh, okay, like my stomach's bothering me. So keep an eye on it. A lot of people think it's because I'm eating too much protein. Yeah, probably not. It's probably the other stuff that's in the protein powder. So keep an eye on those. And then what else do we want to be looking for?
I guess the other main things would be, as far as the type of protein we are going to do, really personal preference. So animal protein, like a whey protein, is going to be I would say, like the best option. If you can tolerate it, I would say go with a whey,
Mm-hmm.
like a whey protein isolate. The next best, I would say, like an egg white. That's actually what I use because dairy free, and then also it digests very well. And I actually have a lot of people that handle dairy but don't handle the whey protein, so they do the egg white protein. You're still
Nice.
getting a complete amino acid profile. So I like whey protein, egg white protein, and then I would say plant based proteins. If you are vegan, vegetarian, those are great options too. When doing a plant based, I would look at ones that are like a sport form because they usually have the amino acids added. So that's something to keep in mind there. So there are different types. Seeing what works best for you, I think it's going to be great overall. And then also just kind of going back to the ingredients, avoiding your like soybean oil, safflower, corn oil, palm kernel oil, kind of avoiding those. Ideally, our protein, it's mainly protein
Mm-hmm.
powder in it, like made from protein. So like the one I use, it's from Drink Wholesome, that egg white based one. There's only like 4 ingredients in it. So they sweeten it. Their new ones are with maple sugar. There are other ones are with monk fruit. Either one's a fine sweetener. Some people just don't like monk fruit, so you can do either one. But that is a great, simple protein powder. Where some of these, I've looked at a few that they don't have like terrible ingredients, but it's like a paragraph long of ingredients. And I do find, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I do find a couple clients just don't handle that well. And I
Mm-hmm.
chalk it up to be like, there's just so many different things going on here. And I'm like,
They're just really,
it's
really
hard to
highly,
tell.
yeah, they're really highly processed,
Yeah,
and it is kind of hard to tell like what in it
what
is
is
kind of
causing.
bugging you. And if you're gonna have it every day, it's not worth it, because
Mhm.
then it's like every day you're gonna be dealing with this stuff, and it's like, okay, yeah,
Yeah. So if your protein powder is bothering you, take a look at the artificial sweeteners, what's made in it, like what is this protein powder made of? And then if you're still having some issues and you're using a whey base, you can try and switch to an egg based one. And we'll drop the link to Drink Wholesome in the not the comments, the show notes.
yeah, yeah.
Words are hard today, guys.
They are hard. It's a thing.
Yes. Yeah,
No,
I think those are the good main things to kind of hit on for protein. Anything else we should add?
no, that's it. Eat more protein. Oh, one more thing, because I know the RDI people always bring this up, like, recommended daily.
RDA.
Yeah, RDA. Sorry, I'm mixing up with the DRI. Sorry, you guys.
It's fine. That's why we're a team.
Words are hard. They are. I've been seeing this go around a lot, and I get why people are doing it, because they're like, whatever. It's all about finding a middle ground. Okay. Extremes are horrible. But I will say, like, those recommendations are the minimal amount that you need to not be deficient or malnourished.
Mhm.
Okay. So that whole like zero point 0.8 gram per kilogram body weight, that is like your bare minimum that you need to not be malnourished. In my opinion, and again, this is used in the clinical world when we have someone in the ICU, or we have someone just, we have someone with a certain disease state, and it's a very controlled, like, it's a very controlled environment. You're in the hospital. Those are needed. But I just think in your everyday life, you shouldn't be using the bare minimum. So I mean, should we give an example of like a starting point that we like to give, or just try to get this much a meal?
So I would start because it kind of gets into the woodworks when we're trying to like give out personal recommendations
Yeah.
over. a broad audience.
Yeah.
So I would start 20 to 30 gram range. That most adults, that's like the low end for them.
Mm-hmm.
20 grams is kind of like bare minimum in my opinion. 30 grams is going to help at least stimulate that muscle protein synthesis. With that being said, as an adult, you might even need more than 30 grams per meal. I would say for me personally, I aim for, let me see, I would say I get between 115, 120 grams of protein per day.
Yeah. No,
And
that's
it freaks people out when I say that, but I'm like, your body will love you for doing that.
yeah. And if you're like wanting more specific advice, you can work with us because this is something that we give clients. And
Mhm.
we kind of go into why we're doing this. Why is this your range? What should your other nutrients look like? And we'll walk you through it. But yeah, I think as a blanket statement, that 25 to 30 was really good. If you kind of start paying attention and you're like, wow, I'm getting way less than this, hitting that bare minimum of 20 grams a meal and working your way up will be really helpful. But if you're listening to this and then you've seen it floating around on Instagram, like we really don't need that much protein. I just, want to point out that like we like to thrive. So having a little bit more than what you need to survive is a little bit important.
Yeah,
In my
I would
opinion.
agree.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. So yeah, start there, see how you're doing. This doesn't mean you have to track every single thing. I don't track my meals. I just kind of have a good general idea of what I'm doing per meal. So it helps me to look at like breakfast,
Mhm.
lunch, dinner instead of like trying to fit it in like 120 for the whole day. I just look at each meal, divide that up by like 3-ish, and then I usually have a snack with protein, so that helps boost it up even more.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to be too, that's another thing to point out. It's okay. You don't have to be like,
It doesn't have to be exact.
I'm not a crazy macro counter. Like, just because also with it, we want to be listening to our hunger, fullness cues.
Yes.
Our needs change. I know we hate that. I know people hate to hear that. Our needs change daily, depending on a lot of things. So you don't got to be perfect.
Mhm. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode. I hope it's helpful. Tag us in what your breakfast is looking like when you're trying to bump up that protein so we can see what has been helping you and let us know if you notice a change because this is a great way or a great spot to start at. So let us know how you're doing with it. Next week, we are talking about grocery staples. So we had posted on Instagram, and this was a highly requested topic. So
Yeah, we got that.
if
We
you
got a
have
lot.
anything, yeah, if you have anything you want us to talk about with around grocery staples like meals, things to have on hand, send us a message. That way we can be sure to talk about it in next week's episode.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.